This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like, to check you have the tickets in your wallet first before you drive 2 hours to the big game. Seriously, you had one job. Now the closest you'll get to the 50-yard line is parking lot D. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
It's football season, and you can now get almost anything you need for game day delivered with Uber Eats. What do we mean by almost? Well, you can't get a running back delivered, but you can get baby back ribs delivered. A strong defense? No. A strong deodorant? Yes. The six-pack of abs? Nope. Six-pack of beer? Yes. Get almost anything for game day delivered with Uber Eats, official on-demand food delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Alcohol 21 plus and in select cities. Product availability varies by region. See app for details.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Welcome back to the Skating Penguin Network, everyone. It is Robbie here again, and this is a special episode. We are now just about 48 hours as we record this from the beginning of the 24-25 Penguins season. They dropped the puck on Wednesday, October 9th against the Rangers at PPG Paints Arena. And to help us kick off this season, we invited a special guest from the Locked On Penguins podcast. You may know the name. You probably do if you're around the Penguins social media space at all. But welcome to the show, Hunter Hodies. As I said, the host of the Locked On Penguins podcast. Hunter, how are things going on this Monday for you?
Going well today. You know, we finished up wedding season this past weekend. My lady and I went to a wedding, so no more of those for the season now. But other than that, pretty good. The Steelers lost on Sunday. That sucks. But hey, this Penguin season starts this week, and I'm pretty excited for it.
It does start this week. A very late night if you were a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. Very late and disappointing night, but that is neither here nor there, obviously. But also joining us from across the continent, kind of across the continent. He is in Seattle. It is, as always, Snail. Snail, how are things out in the Pacific Northwest?
Things are good. It's a beautiful bluebird day, about 68 degrees outside. And just like your Steelers, the Seahawks took an L in embarrassing fashion. So we're kind of all in that boat this week. But other than that, man, things are pretty good out here. So excited that hockey's back. Penguins games are just around the corner this week, and super excited to have this episode finally here where we're breaking down the roster, going over the cuts, going to be giving some bold predictions. So things are I'm excited, man. I'm pumped up, and I'm hyped to have Hunter Hodies here. Hunter, never met you, never listened to your podcast, but a former host on the show and a good friend of ours, Garrett, always spoke very highly of you. So it's nice to put a face to the name, and excited to have you here, bud.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. You'll have to listen to the next episode, that's for sure. Nah, you can, of course. Yeah. But yeah, Garrett, very good friend as well. Pat knows him too, and he was always a really fun listen to on this podcast, but you both together are also great. So it's fun to come on here.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. So before we jump into the actual hockey talk, Hunter, tell us a little bit about Locked On, how long you've been there. You guys produce, I think during the season, 4 or 5 episodes a week. So just, you can talk about Pat too. Pat, your co-host. We mentioned him on the podcast, Pat Damp. If you're, again, in the Penguins social media sphere at all, you definitely know who Pat is. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Locked On, and what your plans are for the season over on that side of the Penguins social media space.
Yeah, so I started the show by myself, 5 years ago, almost to the day. Yeah, I was a senior in college. I saw that they were looking for a host, and I had never really done a podcast before. So I was like, okay, I'll just throw my hat in there. Honestly, really wasn't expecting a call back because I'd never done a podcast before, but the guy actually called back and said, you were actually on one of my short list of candidates that I was looking at. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. So I obviously interviewed for it, and I was able to beat out a couple of people. And now 5 years later, the show is still running really strong. This is season 6 now, if I recall correctly. Yep, this is season 6. We do 5 episodes a week during the season, game recaps, game previews. We bring guests on from the Penguins media sphere, or, I've had Brock McGinn on when he was a member of the Penguins. We're still looking to maybe get another player or two on at some point, but we do, full objective analysis on, each game, how the team is doing. We do other topics, Wilkes-Barre, Wheeling, everything regarding the Pittsburgh Penguins, and any news that comes through, obviously big on the trade deadline, free agency, all that stuff. And then once the summer comes around mid-July, I would say after free agency settles, we go down to 3 days a week. But I did this show solo for about the first 4 years, and I felt like I just wanted to expand it. I felt like with how Pat and I, we always talked a lot on social media, and I figured he would be a great addition to the team. And I reached out to him, and he was like, oh yeah, I'm absolutely interested. And, it's been a little over a year now since he joined, and I feel like the show has continued to grow and grow. And, we're getting close to 3K on YouTube. Our audio downloads continue to go up, but that's really what the show is to a T. We do, objective based analysis on the Penguins, game recaps, previews, bring guests on, all that good stuff. But that's what we're going to continue doing this year. And, we'll have covered trade deadline, free agency, all that stuff. We'll be recapping every game and previewing every game this season as well. But it's a lot of fun. I know it's a lot of work, but trust me, it's a lot of fun, and I wouldn't trade it for the world, honestly.
Yeah, you guys do a tremendous job. I wish I could listen to every episode, but I'll throw it on YouTube at work. And Pat has been a hockey head he's pretty close to my age. So he's been doing Penguins fandom for about as long as I have. Pat is one of the best guys. He's done well before, even with Locked On, before he got on Locked On with you. He was doing stuff with different media spaces in the Penguins world. So Pat is great. And I think the shows are easy to do when you have a co-host. It's sometimes you just kind of get into rambling. I know I didn't want to keep doing this when Garrett backed out. If Snail wouldn't want to keep doing it, because listening to one person talk can definitely get a little boring, but it's great that you guys are growing, and you guys are a must listen. So if you are a Penguins fan, Hunter, I believe, is on Twitter at Hunter Hodies, just your name without a space. Is it at LO Penguins is the
LO_Penguins? Yes.
_Penguins. Okay, I will make sure I put all that in the tweet when I send this out in the morning. But we're just gonna dive right into it now. Snail, do you have any questions for Hunter before we get into the outline?
No, man. I was just gonna say 4 or 5 episodes a week when the season's going. That's a grind, and I appreciate it, man. That's cool. I think that's it's got to be nice. One thing I found since I jumped on here that I was just gonna say, like, it's like after you watch a game, it's kind of like therapeutic to be able to hop on and just like either celebrate or gripe about a game with like a co-host, like I've been doing with Robbie and Garrett. And 4 or 5 a week, that's awesome, man. So congrats on that. I'm definitely gonna be downloading the pod and checking it out. So I think that's cool, man.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's always, even after like a tough loss, for example, like we'll get on like the next day, and even like when we're over the loss, of course, we're adults here, but I still want to like vent out at least some frustration that maybe is still there, at least a little bit. So you're right. It's very therapeutic. And also, it's great when they do something well. I'm always first there to praise it, but I always keep the same energy for something. If they don't do well, I'll criticize accordingly. I'm not just going to be, or Pat as well. We're not going to be like overly, biased and all that.
Yeah.
Last year must have been like, at least you guys waited till the next day to record. Last year we were like when they were on that like 0 for 30 power play, we just hop on right after the game, just no smiles, just like, I can't believe this is continuing. There was a lot of tough recordings last season. Yeah. So maybe, Rob, we got to look into doing it the next day. So we're a little separated
we might have to.
But hey, we're optimistic, right? We've had an off season. We're all optimistic. The power play is going to be clicking at a 50% rate, and the team's going to start off the flying, right? That's where we're at.
That's what I hope. But all right, so 48 hours out. They open Wednesday night. We have a roster. The rosters had to be finalized by this afternoon, and 22 guys, 17 from last year are returning. Most of them we have, but Jesse Puljujarvi, what a training camp preseason, makes the cut. There was pretty much no doubt after, I'd say, the last 2 or 3 preseason games. Cody Glass, brought over from Nashville, is on that roster. Joel Blomqvist is the backup simply because Alex Nedeljkovic is on the IR for the time being. And Rucker McGroarty, again, maybe it's injuries, maybe it's not. He is in. So those 4 guys make the roster. Other than that, is there anybody that sticks out as an eye-opener that made this team? To me, I'm going to say no, but I want to hear what you guys have to say here. Hunter, we'll start with you.
Honestly, no, I agree with you. Excuse me, Robbie. I wasn't really too surprised that McGroarty made it just because of all the injury situations. I think if this team was fully healthy, it could be a different story, but I do think McGroarty had a really good camp, had a really good preseason. I finally had that wow moment in that final preseason game when I saw him play really well with Lars Eller and Jesse Puljujärvi. So totally great with him making the team. And I said that when they acquired him, I even said he's going to have a shot to make this team, and don't be surprised if he does. Sure enough, he goes out there, has a good camp in the preseason, and earned his way a spot on this team. And, if he plays well, even when a couple of these guys start coming back, Blake Lizotte, Brian Russ, I'll be curious to see what Mike Sullivan does overall. Does someone like a Cody Glass come out and Anthony Beauvillier come out before Rucker McGroarty? So that's a conversation that you can kick it down the road, but it's still going to come up at some point. But I still want to see how McGroarty does with Puljujärvi and Eller at least to start the season. Other than that, there's really no surprises here. Yeah. I understand that people are upset about Harrison Brunick being sent back to his junior team, but honestly, he was the last junior player standing out of all the training camps. That's a victory in itself. He got sent down on basically the final day of the camp and preseason on Monday because, you're really ramping up for the first game on Tuesday, then obviously the morning skate on Wednesday. But he got all the way to the end. He exceeded all expectations and then some. His time is coming. He might be ready by next season. If he goes out there, has a really good year in junior, I can definitely see him making this team even beyond the 9-game tryout next season. I just think I would have definitely considered giving him the tryout. I was basically on board with it if they wanted to give him it, but I also understand the opposite side where you do that, you take Jackson Ivany out for 9 games, who's been playing really well for this team. That's interesting. And then also when this blue line is fully healthy, I just don't see a spot for him at least full time this year. So I'm fine with him going back to junior and all that. But otherwise, no big surprises here at all.
Snail.
Yeah, no big surprises. I think once Carlson said that he was going to play opening night, I thought Brunicky should have gone back to was it Kamloops anyways? Back to the Dub. He's 18 years old. Like you said, him being 18 and still being in camp, I mean, he's obviously impressed. He's someone to be excited about. So not too many surprises for me. I might be one of the only Penguins fans I don't question him, but I might be one of the only Penguins fans that is curious how Valtteri Puustinen continues to be on this roster. I mean, he scored like 2 goals in his career, 4 goals or something like that. And I know he's kind of a little buzzsaw out there, undersized. And I don't, it's not that I hate the guy. I'm not picking on him, but every once in a while, I'm just like, how is he has the trust of Sullivan. So good on him for securing his spot. But when this lineup came out, what was it, like 4 hours ago? I was a little bit like, yeah, he made the team again. But there's injuries. I get it. When Russ comes back, who knows who will be left standing on that right side or as a winger. But are either of you guys ever wondering how this Valtteri kid keeps making this lineup?
You want to go, Robbie, or should I?
Yeah, I'll you saw the flashes last year, and I'm not saying that this is a kid that's going to be a winger for Sid. Not at all. I don't think he's going to be another Brian Rust in 3 or 4 years. You see, and with a kid that young, when you see those flashes, I think from a coaching perspective and a management perspective, it's very hard to just put him down, especially with experience. This team is, again, injuries are definitely helping him right now, but he has the experience. He showed, like I said, showed the flashes last year, had a pretty good final April or 2 or 3 weeks of the season. I just think it's more of he does have Sullivan's trust. The management seems to like him. And I don't know, if he starts the season goalless in 10 games and just isn't there, we'll have a different conversation. But I just think the flashes are there, and it's really hard for me to give up on him. I don't know what his waiver status is exactly, and I think that's a part of the would McGrody go down, because you have guys. McGrody wouldn't have to go through waivers. You can just send him down. He gets some experience down in the A and be fine. But I just think with the flashes Puustinen showed, it's really hard for Sullivan and company to move on at this moment right now.
I think with Puustinen, he's an NHL player for me. I think he proved that last year. 5 goals, 20 points last year. He was actually almost a half a point per game player. So you see the flashes, you see the release. I think he has one of the best releases on this team. He's using it to his advantage, that he can really fire the puck. It's just about consistency, I think, for him. I think for the opening night lineup, I don't think he's going to be in the lineup right now, just because I think, players like Puljujarvi, McGrody, and Cody Glass are a bit ahead of him right now. But knowing this team and how injured they usually always are, I'm sure he's going to draw in at some point this season. And I do think he's a good depth option overall. He will require waivers, Puustinen, that is, before going back to Wilkes-Barre. So you do have to be careful about a team potentially poaching him off waivers. But, we'll have to see. I feel like a lot of teams have a Puustinen type player at this point. Yeah. But I do feel like he has proven that he's an NHL player. It's just the Penguins' depth right now, it's a bit better this year compared to the last 2 years. I still don't think it's great per se, but it's still a bit better. And that's, I think, the main reason why he's not, at least right now, not cracking the lineup. But I'm not surprised that he is still with the organization, considering I think the talent that he does have.
Yeah, I would agree with that assessment as well. And you mentioned the depth, and not just the depth on the NHL roster. It feels like, as we sit here now, the depth throughout the entire organization has dramatically improved in the past. Kyle Dubas has been 14, 16 months as ahead of the Penguins. And again, he hasn't been perfect. I think this offseason was a better performance from him, but you swap Yeager out for McGrody. Yeager's probably a year or two away from the NHL at this point. Rucker McGrody's on an opening night roster right now. I saw someone mention when McGrody was traded for that everything about him just screams future captain, if he can put it all together. But Owen Pickering seems like he's coming along. Bruneke seems like, he's there. Bruneke's right there. Tanner Howe, the other kid they drafted this year, looks like he's going to be a player in the NHL. And it just feels like the waves are starting to change. I know in Corey Pronman's athletic rankings, the Penguins have climbed a couple spots these last 2 summers now. So it definitely feels like youth is coming. And I saw Jesse Marshall today said mentally I would start preparing for a Marcus Pettersson trade with the emergence of Bruneke and possibly Owen Pickering as well. So something to chew on as this season begins and goes along.
Yeah, I think with Pettersson, they're going to treat this the same way they treated Jake Guentzel last year. I think that's probably the best course of action at this point. If you're in a playoff spot by the deadline and you're maybe doing better than expected of you, keep him by all means, especially if you want to make the playoffs and you want to try to maybe squeeze one last, at least right now, unlikely run out of Crosby, Malkin, and Letang before I feel like the rebuild fully starts. But if it's similar to last year where it looks like they're out of it, I think you got to trade Pettersson. I think if you're on the bubble and it's, you're in the playoffs, but it's by a point, you're out of the playoffs and it's 2 points, the decision gets tougher. I still think the front office would probably lean towards trading Pettersson in that situation, which it would hurt, but I would totally understand the vision considering what they've been doing over the last year and change with the new vision overall. But they're going to have a tough call. Either way, it's going to be a tough call. Yeah. But I feel like right now, if I had to make a prediction, just sitting here, I think they're going to move him at the deadline.
All right, Snell.
On Pettersson getting moved?
Yeah,
absolutely. I think that I don't think there's really too much of a question. Like you said, the old own rental, I hate that term, but it happens, with certain teams when it comes to around that time of year. But yeah, if the Penguins are rolling, just keep them. And if they're not, dude, first round pick and another asset for a guy like Marcus Pettersson. And with the way things have been trending, with the way Dubas is like to do business, as we've seen over the last, however you said, 14 months or whatever, or however long he's been GM now, it's I wouldn't be surprised at all. And I think that he would be using him to pick up an asset. A defenseman like Marcus Pettersson at the deadline, you're talking first rounder starting point, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think a guy like Pedersen, his pedigree and what he does is so rare in today's NHL that a guy like, say that they're out of the playoffs and Edmonton comes to mind right away. Edmonton, that blue line, you can do so much with McDavid and Draisaitl, but so many questions on that blue line. A team like, let's say the Kings, let's say Doughty isn't ready at any point this year. You don't know what that leg's going to do. If they come calling what Pedersen does and how good he does it, I think you can definitely get a high return on a guy like Marcus Pedersen, even as a pending free agent.
It'll probably be a late first and maybe a prospect, maybe a roster player, but it probably won't be more than that. I don't think you're looking at a Jake Gensel type package here.
Probably no. I mean, Gensel's a 40-goal scorer,
right?
Yeah, I
but
mean, that's
if you can get a late first, I mean, Ben Sherratt got a first round pick a couple years ago at a deadline, and Ben Sherratt is not that good. So teams at the deadline, even buyers, they will pay a premium for a top four left-handed defenseman. So I think they can definitely get a late first for him.
Most NHL general managers are much dumber than what people give them credit for. Let's put it like that. And they will do anything to take a run at a Stanley Cup. So, all right. So 48 hours from now when the puck drops, I thought until Brian Russell went down, it was pretty much easy picking how they were going to line up. And it appears that he still is in like a day-to-day type situation. I think he can come off IR really at any point. But Hunter, on Wednesday night, how do you see the Penguins lining up?
Yeah, so I think the lines that you saw at practice on Monday are probably going to be the ones you see on Wednesday. I think Beauvillier is just that placeholder for Rust whenever Rust is ready to go. And then once Rust comes back, you'll see Beauvillier slide down in the bottom six, where I think it's better for him at this point. But it's no accident that they put him with Crosby, because they were using him quite a bit next to Crosby throughout camp. Remember, they were in the same group when camp opened. They were used together during some of the dress rehearsal preseason games. So no surprise that he's in that spot. And then, again, he'll be moving down a bit further down the lineup. And then the second line with Bunting, Malk, and Raquel, they used that a lot down the stretch last year. You're going to see it a lot this year too. That was, in my opinion, I think the best line on the Penguins down the stretch last year. All three players, well, at least two of them were performing really well. At least Raquel was starting to get his form back. And I do think if he gets his form back this year, that is a big development for the Penguins. And could push their ceiling a bit higher than I think a lot of us expect them to be at this year. And then the third line, just keep that third line from the last preseason game, man. I mean, I really think, that Eller, Puljujarvi, McGroarty line showed something in that game against Columbus. And yeah, I understand you're playing a bunch of backups, but their underlying numbers were great. The shot attempts per 60 rate were great. Expected goals, high danger chances, they were all well over 50 to 55%. They dominated the Blue Jackets in that game. They cycled really well. They defended well. Try it out in a regular season game, especially against a team like the Rangers. See how all three of those guys mesh. And then you have the fourth line, I think, of, Kevin Hayes, Noel Acciari, Cody Glass. Having Acciari on wing this year, I think, is so important. He's okay at center, but I just think he's a lot better as a winger. He can focus on the aspects of his game that, have made him a good bottom six player in the league before he got to Pittsburgh. He was once a one-time 20-goal scorer. You put him on the wing. I'm not saying he's going to get back to that. I definitely don't think he is, but I think we'll have the chance, to be a 10 to 12 to 13 goal scorer if he's able to stay healthy. And then defensively, you're going to see the same pairings. Pedersen, Carlson, Grzelcyk, Letang. I know we like to pick on Ryan Graves because he was awful last year and he did not have a good preseason, but they're going to give him a chance to redeem himself this year. Kyle Dubas said as much during the press conference today. But I'll say this, if it goes bad again, I think he's out the door after the season's over.
Snail, I think that's pretty much what we've been kind of saying, that, okay, you're going to let him prove himself, but if it doesn't work out, they're going to have to find a way to get out of that contract.
Regarding Graves?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't think – you think that if he's struggling really bad down the stretch, Dubas won't maybe try something amidst the season?
I mean,
depending on what it takes to get rid of him.
Kyle Dubas does not seem to be one in the mind of giving up assets to move assets.
I think he moved a first rounder to get rid of Marlowe when he was in Toronto, didn't he?
I don't know.
And it turned out to be that Jarvis kid in Carolina.
Yeah. So again, his goal right now is to rebuild the Penguins on the fly as much as possible. But Graves is such an interesting situation because he came in last year. He was the big free agent signing. And it seemed like there was alarm bells going off as soon as ink or pen hit paper on that deal. And I don't know how he can do in a sheltered role. He's very expensive to have in a sheltered role.
Yeah, but
I'm interested. You have to. You can't put him out there with Chris Letang. And because Chris Letang, I love Chris Letang. I need him playing heavy offense as much as possible. I need Erik Karlsson playing heavy offense as much as possible. So I need to know that the guy on their line is a reliable defender. Brian Dumoulin was that for years in Pittsburgh with Chris Letang.
Right.
Marcus Pettersson is that with Erik Karlsson. If he can do anything with Jack St. Ivany, who, as Hunter mentioned, very high on, it seems like most fans are high on him right now. They signed him to a 3-year deal. They didn't do that on accident. It's not like if they wanted to prove himself, he would have signed a 1-year, 2-year bridge deal and been done with it. But I think that you have to give him a shot, and if it doesn't work, you just got to find a way to either shelter him as much as possible, put him in the press box. I don't know if his contract might be difficult to move during the season. But yeah, if he doesn't perform this year, then next summer they're going to have to do anything they can to get that contract out of there.
They're going to have to, if it's another season of what we saw last year. But I don't know. Like, I feel like for the way he played last year, and he kind of was the whipping boy of the Penguins last season. I feel like he's going to be better than he was last year. Like, I just think that it would be hard for him to repeat or be worse. He's a pro. I don't know. It's like he was never that bad when he was in Jersey and Colorado. He hit an all-time low in Pittsburgh. So I'm hopeful for the guy. Even like third pairing, if you're putting, what is it, $5 million? He's got around 5 or
something like that.
$5 million on the third pairing. I mean, Edmonton does it with Nurse, and he makes way more money than that. And and Graves isn't half as physical as a guy like Nurse is. So I wouldn't mind it as long as it's not super glaring. And you mentioned Jack St. Ivany. Dude, I love Jack St. Ivany. I think quickly hopped on the St. Ivany train when he came up. He's physical. He's a true stay-at-home defenseman. So many games last year when things were, down that stretch when it was, they were playing for their playoff hopes, he was just making the safe play every time off the glass and out. Good first pass, physical down low. I loved it. So, just pumping his tires quick. But yeah, Graves did not do that. Graves I don't think he's capable of a lot of that play. So you just hope that he rebounds and he can just kind of take a page out of Jack St. Ivany's book and make the safe play and don't try to do too much. And he's got that huge frame, man. He's like he's a massive body. If he could learn to even just be a little bit physical with it, which it's an art in hockey, you can try to be as physical as you want, but it's about timing. It's a fast game. It's never been faster. So you just hope over the off season he did something, worked on something. I don't know, hired somebody to get some feedback and opinions on his play last year, and he can hopefully just a little bit of an improvement on last year. I think you could bury him on that third pair shutdown guy, and I wouldn't mind it.
Yeah, I mean, can Jack St. Ivany be his John Marino in Pittsburgh? Graves' best when he was good in Jersey that got him that contract, he was playing alongside John Marino. So again, John Marino, nothing super flashy about that game, but can Jack St. Ivany be kind of like even a discount John Marino to kind of settle him down? Because your third pairing, you don't need your third pairing to do anything fancy. Just manage the game, get the puck out, just play solid. That's really all you need from that third pairing. Hunter,
I loved that pairing last year of Ryan Shea and Jack St. Ivany. I thought that they were great, like, sheltered minutes or whatever. Is there? I haven't seen anything about Ryan Shea. Is he
he's
on
the seventh. No, he's the seventh defenseman.
Yeah,
seventh defenseman. I like that pairing. I feel like almost like if they didn't have this Graves issue, I'd be totally confident in that bottom pairing if he was going out there again.
I agree with that as well.
Yeah, I mean, there was a reason why. One of the reasons why they started playing a bit better down the stretch was because Ryan Graves was not in the lineup. Obviously, he was a bit banged up, and I'm glad that he was able to recover from that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you take him out for a few games, and you don't really see all the warts anymore. And yeah, Ryan Shea, I felt like at the beginning of the season, he did not look well. But later on in the season, he started coming on and showing himself that he can be a serviceable, at least number 7 defenseman in the NHL. And that was obviously when you saw St. Ivany really break out as well. He was really good one-on-one in his own zone. He brought a little bit of offense as well. I think asking him to maybe babysit Ryan Graves could be a little much, but hey, I'm how do I want to say it? Cautiously optimistic that it can work just because of how St. Ivany played, but I need to see a few games from Graves before I
agree with that.
Obviously more confident about it.
Absolutely. That's completely fair assessment on Ryan Graves. You don't want to just bury him here before we even get a game in or even a couple games in, but I love what I've seen from Jack St. Ivany. I think we're seeing that hopefully that the end of last season wasn't just a flash in the pan, because his preseason, he was really, really good in preseason. And grain of salt preseason. Everything he did in preseason looked exactly like the Jack St. Ivany we saw at the end of last season. Fingers crossed. And like you said, Ryan Shea, again, off waivers during training camp, you're just throwing a guy into the fire. So you expect him to struggle a little bit, but a perfectly capable seventh defenseman on this roster, I think. All right, now looking at the actual season. Like I said, Wednesday night, 3 games this week, which is really weird to say, just that we have 3 games back-to-back to open it, with the Rangers and Red Wings, and then Toronto on Saturday evening. So the big question that everybody wants to know, what killed them last year, the power play. Are we expecting it to be better? What are our thoughts as we sit here now about the power play? Again, looked good in preseason, didn't always convert. New coach there. What are the feelings on the power play heading into the season?
I'm more optimistic for it after what I saw in the preseason. I felt like I saw a much more bigger emphasis on net front play throughout those games. They were actually, getting bodies in front of the net, getting some more deflections. I also felt like the movement was also a lot better. They weren't playing patty cake at the point, just passing it back and forth while not moving the penalty killers. I also thought last year that was bad. They were too stagnant on the power play. That really killed them overall. And I think when you add those 2 ingredients together, I think you can have yourselves a potential at least average power play. And of course, more of a shoot first mentality. I've been seeing that throughout the preseason as well. You add all 3 of those together, I think you can have at least an average power play, especially with the talent that the Penguins can throw out there against other penalty killers. It looks like this year, Mike Sullivan to start is going to have Erik Karlsson and Chris Letang on the same power play. He said that last year. He's like, we're ready to unleash these 2 on the power play together. That never happened. They played on a handful of games, and not even really a handful of games. They only played like a couple before they each quarterbacked their respective units. With Letang quarterbacking most of this unit to throw out camp because Karlsson was hurt, and now Karlsson's coming back, it makes sense at least to start with Letang quarterbacking it and then maybe having Karlsson on the half wall. You have Crosby Malkin out there. You can rotate Raquel, Bunting. I prefer Bunting on the top unit, but hey, that's just me. I understand why they want Raquel up there with his release, but I think Bunting is more of a net front guy, cleaning up the garbage player. I think works a bit better. But again, I like what I've seen so far throughout the preseason, but you got to carry it over to the regular season. If they start reverting back to old habits, we're all, I'm sure, going to be quick to criticize this team and go after them, considering how bad it was last year. But so far, heading into the regular season, I am more optimistic. I just hope it stays that way.
An average power play last season, they're pretty comfortably in the playoffs.
Yes.
But Snail, what are your thoughts on the power play? Just the hopes, and what are your thoughts first? What are your thoughts of going Karlsson Letang? I mean,
I hate it. I don't like it.
Really?
I don't. Yeah, and I'll tell you why. For so many years for this Penguin squad, I've wanted a one-time option on the left half wall. Like, they've never had that. Like, Kessel wasn't even like a one-time option. He was kind of, he didn't really have the one-timer.
Yeah.
But he was a great threat to shoot the puck there. And I can't even remember the last time they had a right shot option right there. That's, I'm not like a Stamkos or like Ovi. Those guys are epic goal scorers. I'm not asking for that, but just a one-time option there. I with this power play, I'd love to see someone there. I remember I've seen they've tried it with Schultz a couple of times. They had him there as an option on the half wall. I just don't know if I like Letang there. I'd like to see maybe Karlsson there, like you said, Hunter. I think having him, Karlsson has a rocket of a shot. Utilize it a little bit more. I want to see Karlsson shoot more on the power play too. And I think that with what's his name? The Quinn coming in. I'm hoping that that's going to be more so the case this season on that first unit power play. But they went, what, 20, that says here, 28.6% on the power play, improvement over the 15.3% they had last year, which is just crazy to even like read out loud. It has to be better. I think that if it starts out slow, I feel like this team will be quick to make some adjustments. I was curious, Hunter or Robbie, you said that there was a little bit more net front presence going on these power plays. Was it Bunting and was it Puljujarvi they had net front mostly? Or who was their net front guys? Or just bodies in general?
I mean,
Hunter, you can go with that.
Yeah, at least in the preseason, a lot of it was Bunting on the second unit, especially at the end of last season too. A lot of it was Bunting. He was getting to the front of the net, cleaning up the garbage, kind of doing his best Patrick Hornquist impression overall. You also saw Puljujarvi, Snail, you're right, especially during the preseason, he was on, the top power play for like the Penguins, C to D teams. He was going right to the net mouth, and he was, he got a couple of goals that way. They started the preseason. He had one of his best games. One of the reasons he got to the front of the net, and you saw him carry that over to the rest of the preseason games. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why he is on this open night roster and why he has a spot on that team for Wednesday. So yeah, I think it's those two, but also it's just bodies to the net in general. Even during the game against Ottawa, you were seeing Crosby down low in front of the net. You were seeing Malkin move around as well. I would like that they're moving Malkin around on the power play as well. You don't need him sitting at the top of the point all the time. They got to combat some of this stuff with how, they were tied for the league lead last year, if I recall correctly, in shorthanded goals against.
Yeah,
Terrible.
They may have. They
did have the most.
They may have had the most.
Yeah, I think at the very, you might be right.
They ended up getting that one.
I think at the very end.
And it was like double digits. It was insane.
Yes,
it was dumb. And yeah, it's one thing I hope to see that you saw a couple times last year, that maybe it's just a Carlson thing, but he has a knack of that shot pass that just finds Crosby's stick.
Mm.
He again, it might just be because he's a Hall of Fame defenseman, an all-world defenseman, putting him with probably the best redirector of passes in NHL history. I love that aspect of it. And Crosby obviously is not afraid to get his nose dirty. But I love the idea of Bunting just in general being a shit stirrer on this team. He's not as big as Hornquist, but he just oozes that Hornquist energy. Another guy that kind of
dude.
He is. He's absolutely a rat. And Hunter, I know you mentioned it on your show today. Like, a lot of people were not thrilled with that addition when he came over last year in that trade. I again blew every expectation that I think any of us had. Was tremendous. Scored a massive goal against Tampa Bay in that April run, and I think that's the kind of goal he scored against Tampa Bay. It wasn't a snipe. He was just standing there in front of, I'm 99% sure Vasilevsky was playing in that game.
Yes.
And just kicked it to a stick, buried it, and they win that game. But Bunting on the power play, I love that idea. I understand Raquel is kind of like the Kessel version. Just the shot is there. He has the sniping ability. And we'll talk a little bit more about Raquel here a little bit later, but I do like the idea of Bunting being the Hornquist type player on that power play, because I just think that is going to be more effective than
It's football season, and you can now get almost anything you need for game day delivered with Uber Eats. What do we mean by almost? Well, you can't get a running back delivered, but you can get baby back ribs delivered. A strong defense? No. A strong deodorant? Yes. A six-pack of abs? Nope. Six-pack of beer? Yes. Get almost anything for game day delivered with Uber Eats, official on-demand food delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Alcohol 21 plus and in select cities. Product availability varies by region. See app for details.
Just getting bodies in front of whatever goalie is just going to create more havoc.
Dude, they need a little bit more. Yeah, they need that so bad on 5-on-5 and on the power play. They need a blue collar guy or two down there. You don't need having Carlson, Malkin, Sid. Sid's kind of a blue collar superstar, but yeah, you need a guy like Bunting, I think. And I was gonna say that Hunter, you brought up that game Puljujarvi had in the preseason. I think he had a hat trick. Two of his goals going right to the net, and I loved that. I've been saying it since they picked this guy up. Just Sullivan needs to get into his ear and just show him like an hour of Hornquist tape and just be like, dude, you're 6'4" and you have finishing ability. Just stand in front of the net and learn how to take abuse, draw penalties, and bang in greasy goals. And then power play too. I could see him on a half wall. He's just got such a wicked release. Net front, he could pick up loose change all season long. I think he's had a hell of a preseason, if I'm not surprised. So I'm super stoked.
Puljujarvi's been their best player.
I think he had a quote where he said he's having fun again or something like that. I'm just so excited for this Puljujarvi, even if he's not that 4th overall pick type of skill that he had shown promise of. Even if he's just like, I've said it for so long, he's like a perfect third liner, like a scoring third liner. I'm super excited for him. I'd love to see him on the net front a little bit more with the either power play, 1 or 2.
One thing that's, I think, so important about Puljujarvi is to remember that this year he had a full offseason, a healthy offseason. Last year he came off the fact that he ever came back to the hockey is maybe a small miracle if you know anything about hockey players and hip surgeries. He had a double hip replacement or labral or whatever it was exactly. But he had a full offseason of health, and I think you saw that. I think that there was never any, in his mind, there's never any doubt that he could make this roster. He just went out and played his game, and it worked. A huge player, a big body, goes to the net, can shoot the puck as well. Maybe he's not a 4th overall pick in terms of what he's going to put up on the stat sheet, but now that he's healthy and he's in a system that can probably is better suited to use his size and skill and his skill set, I think he could absolutely flourish this year, especially on a third line role. If you put him with the likes of McGroarty and Eller or Hayes or whoever they end up, because players are going to get shuffled around as the year goes on. I like how they titled it 24-25 roster set, buddy. Most of these guys are going to move up and down the roster all year long with injuries, but no, I do like what I've seen from Puljujarvi, and I really think that he could be an asset on the third line and the power play as well. One guy I did want to mention real quick. You talked Bunting. I think Bunting, his style just fits Malkin for some reason. I don't know if it's Malkin's a bowling ball in himself.
They're bullies.
The other guy on that line, Rickard Rakell, is such a linchpin in what this team does this year. Last year, he didn't score for like the first dozen games. He scored 25 or something the year before that. He gets hurt in December. That shoulder nagged him basically the entire season. He skipped World Championships at the end of the season. Hunter, this is a guy that can go out and score 30, and if he does that, the Penguins are in very good position if that happens.
Yeah, I think Rickard Rakell is one of the biggest X factors on this team this year. I think if he's able to regain some of that past form, score in that 25-30 goal range, whether it's combination of 5-on-5 or power play, I think they will definitely have a shot of getting into the playoffs. I really do. I think him bouncing back is key for this team. And obviously, other keys, Crosby continuing to be Crosby, Malkin continuing to be a really solid second line center, but they need Rakell to bounce back, especially with the contract he has, especially after the year he just had. They need him to bounce back in a big way.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. And he I think at the end of last season, that was coming. That was starting to come. The shoulder was healing. He ran out of track. The season ended. So, but no. And so moving on here, one guy we haven't really mentioned yet, and it's pretty impressive that we made it this far. It is the newly extended captain of the Pittsburgh Penguins, Sidney Crosby, 37 years old, entering season, was this 21 now? What are the expectations now? It's so hard to almost give a fair expectation on Crosby because you expect a 37-year-old to start to wind down, but it doesn't seem like he is. Do you foresee him breaking the Gretzky record, setting it himself, and hitting that point per game plateau again this year?
Yes, I do.
Yeah,
I see it happening. The day he slows down is the day that I might just retire. Really, like, he is such a cyborg. It's crazy. I one of my bold predictions I said on today's show was that he gets 100 plus points this year. I do think he has that ability, especially if the power play improves. I mean, he had 94 points last year, and the power play was one of the worst units in the league. I think he definitely has the ability to hit 100 plus and maybe be near that 105, 110 territory overall. There's no one that works harder than him, and I do think he's going to have another really strong year for this team. I know I shouldn't be saying that because he's 37 and anything can happen, but he hasn't given me a reason not to say it. So I'm just going to keep going off that until I fully see, I think, signs of him truly slowing down as a player.
It's Snail. We talk about Crosby pretty much every episode in some form or fashion, and I've been doing Penguins fandom since 1989, since I was born, and I've gone through the Mario years of the greatest player ever, but the what if of back injuries, cancer, retirement. Crosby, the what if will always be the ungodly numbers he would have put up if he doesn't have that year and a half with concussion, neck issues. Mm-hmm. What do you expect from Sidney Crosby this year? Not only as a player, but now that the contract is done, is he going to just fully drive Canadian media crazy that he signed that contract in Pittsburgh?
Oh yeah, I mean, it started before the offseason even picked up. It was all that they could talk about. That's what carried Canadian media through July and August, was talking about the lack of contract talks that had come out of Sidney Crosby's camp, which I love. I love seeing those guys just chase their tail and go crazy up there over Sid. They're so disappointed. But my expectations for Sid this year, and I don't know if this is, I wouldn't call it a hot take. Maybe it's a little bit of a brave take, but I see him regressing in numbers, but it's not going to be of negative. I think that he's going to regress in numbers because you're going to have a healthy Raquel. I think that Malkin line with Raquel and Bunting, I think they're going to carry over what they had going last season into this season. I think some of these depth options are better. And like you said, with Puljujarvi having a full year, I'm expecting not massive things from him, but I mean reasonable from Puljujarvi. I think that he can put up some decent numbers in a bottom six role. So I think Crosby's going to regress this year in points. I don't see him getting 90 points again, but I think you're going to see these numbers spread out a little bit more. I'm optimistic that the power play is going to be better than what they had in the preseason this year. I think they're going to find a groove at a certain point, and it's going to click above that, whatever, 20%, 25%. And it's not going to all be on Sid's back. So would I like to see him hit 100 points just to shove it up Canadian media's, you know what? Of course, I would love that. But I think because the team is going to be overall better than what they had last year, and it's not going to be a 20-day span at the end of the season that everything's clicking at a decent percent with the power play and 5-on-5. It's not going to all be on Sid this season. So hopefully he can kind of not have to put the team on his back. But we all know he has that ability. I don't care if he's 37, 47. He probably would have the ability at any time to put a team on his back and really get things done. It was almost heartbreaking at times last year seeing it'd be at the end of the game, Penguins give up some weak goal or whatever. They're down by one and Sid's out there. You can tell he's just the intensity. It's like it's a playoff game and it was in the middle of the season. He just couldn't bear to handle that or talk to the media again about how they lost another game or whatever. So I'm hoping that that's not the case this year, and maybe Sid has a little bit of he can take his foot off the gas a little bit, so to say, and not have to put up those monster numbers for a 36, 37-year-old.
94 points at 36 years old is just mind-boggling. And just as a reminder, our listeners here, there's a lot of milestones coming here probably within the first month, 5 weeks. Crosby sits at 592 goals. He's 4 points shy of, he's 8 goals shy of 600. He is 4 points shy of 1,600 points. His counterpart, Malkin, 2 goals shy of 500, 2 assists shy of 800, meaning 4 points shy of 1,300. Going to be a bunch of celebrating going on early in this season. We hope that it continues all season. Crosby will also hit 1,300 games at some point this season, and Malkin should hit 1,200 games, presuming health. So a lot of big milestones coming up this year. So with that, I'll just ask all three of you or both of you straight out, and I'll answer it myself. come April, are the Penguins back in the Stanley Cup playoffs? And Hunter, we'll start with you.
I've been going back and forth on this for a while. I predicted them to get in last year. I was wrong, just barely. I have the Penguins finishing 5th in the Metro this year. I have them barely missing out by a couple of points yet again.
Okay.
I think the people that are saying that they're going to be flat out awful are a bit wrong. I think Sid is just not going to allow them to be a lottery team this year. Even I think bottom 10, I really don't see that at this juncture. I see them being a bubble team that still just barely misses. I'm still a bit concerned about the goaltending, especially, Tristan Jarry in the second half of the season. I'm still, until the power play actually goes out there and performs well, I'm still going to be a bit scared of that as well. I'm still a little bit scared of the depth too, even though I think the bottom 6 this year is a bit better compared to the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. I do think there are legit, things to be worried about with this team. So right now I have them barely missing out.
So you year. If there was a third wild card, you'd have them at third wild card.
If there was a third wild card, yes, I think I would put them in there.
So you're a 9th place finish in the.
Yeah, I have them in that 9th, 10th range, but I think they'll be fighting for a playoff spot all the way until the end.
Snail?
I have them missing playoffs again, but again, middle of the pack, not a bottom. They're not going to be picking top 10 or anything like that. I just think that this year the Atlantic is getting those 2 wild card spots. I think that the Atlantic is so good, and the Metro. I have Carolina taking a big step back this year. I don't think Carolina is going to be what they've. Maybe it's good for them to not have that pressure of being like a Stanley Cup contender. Maybe they're going to, show me. But I see Carolina taking a big step back. The Flyers, that Michkov kid is looking like real deal, possibly, and I could see them. Last year they were in the playoffs until the last month of the season or whatever, right around the trade deadline, and I could see them. Yeah, the Metro is weird to me, but the Atlantic seems solid. I just think that there's a lot of good teams, and I see them missing. Like you said, Robbie, maybe if there was another wild card spot in the East, maybe the Penguins are fighting for that one, but I don't see them making it.
Yeah, I'm kind of in that same until I see it on the ice, I'm going to have to put them outside the playoff picture. I think we'll be in for an exciting 82 games and a very anxiety-filled 82 games. But if the power play comes out and clicks off at above 20%, because again, if they're even an average power play last year in the playoffs with relative ease, the Atlantic, I think you have 3 teams there that are pretty much, again, you don't guarantee anything in the NHL. Florida, Boston, and Toronto feel like they're going to be in the playoffs. And then it's kind of a crapshoot after that. I mentioned this on a podcast a couple weeks ago. Until I see it from Ottawa, I'm just not buying it anymore. Linus Ullmark, that's fantastic. Brady Tkachuk, that's fantastic. Until you show it to me, don't buy it. The Yzer plan, not buying it. Montreal a year or 2 away, but in the Metro, I can make a case for 4 different teams winning the Metropolitan Division. I think I'm going to say Jersey wins it.
I was going to say who you got winning it.
I just think it's going to be Jersey. I think they finally took care of that goaltending situation. That was their downfall last year. They were a pretty decent team outside of injuries. Sheldon Keefe, again, he gets a bad rap because of the failures in Toronto. He never had a problem in the regular season in Toronto. I think they'll be fine. But after that, the Capitals, maybe the worst playoff team in the last 20 years last year. Just not a good hockey team. I'm sorry, Washington fans. The Islanders somehow find a way to just be the most annoying team in the NHL time and time again. But yeah, I think the Penguins are going to be in a dogfight for 82 games. If the power play is good, they're in. If it's not, they're out. That's simple as that.
Yeah.
I think all power play will determine a lot.
Yeah. And all right. Bold predictions. Hunter, we'll start with you as we have been. Give us one of your bold predictions for the Penguins.
Yeah, so I had one of them. I said it earlier. I'll say it again here. I think Crosby goes for 100-plus points this year. I think the power play does improve at least a little bit, and I do think he continues his dominance at 5-on-5. So I will go with that one to start.
All right. Snail?
Are we just giving one bold prediction?
No, we'll give like 2 each or something like that.
So my bold prediction, and I don't know if it's that bold with a guy like Erik Karlsson, but I got him penciled in with 25 goals, 80 plus points this year. I think that he's going to be the main man on that power play one that's going to be clicking at a decent rate. And then I also got Raquel healthy this year. I think he had a full off season to get healthy. Raquel, you could pencil him in for 20 to 30 goals on any given season. Last year was an outlier. I got him at 31 goals, 60 plus points, and he's going to be contributing greatly to the power play units, whether it's 1 or 2 and 5-on-5, because I think that Malkin Bunting line is going to be carrying over what they had going on last year into the season this year.
Yeah, if Karlsson rakes off 80 points, the Penguins are in the playoffs. Let's put it like that, because that means the power play's clicking, I think.
Yeah, we'll see.
For myself, just because, again, this isn't super bold because he's hovered around this number, but because I am like the world's biggest Brian Rust stan, he's scoring 30 goals this year.
How many years have you been saying that?
Well, he's come close. He always averages out to like 30 some goals, but he's never healthy long enough.
He finds a way to just miss out on like 1 or 2 goals.
He's either on pace and then a worldwide pandemic shuts everything down. The next year they only play 45, 46 games or something like that, on pace for it again. Or this year he's like 28, but if he would have played like 10 more games, he probably would have got it. I think he's finally going to get 30. He has been, since he came into the league, one of the, he's not going to be on a Penguins Mount Rushmore, but he is definitely on, like, if you're making like a second or third Mount Rushmore, the dude has been Pittsburgh through and through. He could have walked away for more money 2 years ago. I love Brian Rust. They do not win back-to-back cups without Brian Rust. Game 7 clutch goals, has been Crosby's right-hand man for 5 years now, with Jake Gensel before he left. So yeah, give me Rust at 30, and we'll be happy with that. Hunter, you got one more?
Yeah, one more, 1 or 2 more. I think.
Yeah,
Michael Bunting goes for 30 plus goals this year. I think he's going to be flat out awesome on the second line and on the second power play unit. And I do think the Penguins finally finished with an above 500 record in 3-on-3 overtime this year after how bad they've been these last 2 years. I think that's also been one of the biggest reasons why the Penguins have missed the playoffs these last 2 years is how bad they are in overtime. I do think you start seeing that regress a little bit. They're not going to be dominant like they were when it first came into the league, but I do think they're going to be better in overtime this year.
You mentioned, I was hoping you did bring that up because I do remember you mentioning that on the episode today. And I will add on to that. They won't need to worry about 3-on-3 or shootout if the power play is better. Because how many games did they end up in an overtime situation last year because the power play failed to get that 1 or 2 extra goals during a game that could have prevented them from going to an overtime? If they score more in the power play, maybe they don't have to go to overtime quite as much, thus just taking 2 points instead of having to worry about 1. But the 3-on-3, for as much talent they have, continues to be madly frustrating. Again, you said it on your show. It's just sometimes they just don't look like they know what they're doing. It just looks like a complete discombobulation. But my second bold prediction, and this might speak to a lack of depth at the position, but Tristan Jarry plays well enough that he's the starting goaltender for Team Canada come Four Nations face-off.
Whoa.
Well,
again, I guess their competition is not.
But
Yeah.
I hear you.
Yeah, the depth is not great. The depth is basically Jordan Binnington, and unless somebody completely comes out of nowhere,
Aiden Hill.
Yeah, I mean, unless somebody comes out of nowhere, I think that he plays well enough that he gets the nod for that job, which, again, he's good for that part of the season usually. It's the second part that I get a little more worried about, but I will take Tristan Jarry as a renaissance project this season, but this is the do or die season for Tristan Jarry. We talk about Ryan Graves. I think this is also if Tristan Jarry doesn't put it together this year, we're looking at, especially with being pushed by guys like Joel Blomqvist and Sergei Murashov behind him. So anybody else have a bold prediction before we get to a quick look of the NHL overall? Good. All right. The NHL overall, I believe they start the NHL. Well, they technically did start already out in Czech Republic, but Utah, I know, plays tomorrow night, and there's, I think, 4 games tomorrow night, regular season games. So give me your best team. Who's winning the President's Trophy this year?
President's Trophy. Wow. This is gonna sound bad. Give me the Canucks, baby.
Okay. All right.
I'm a big fan of the Canucks this year again. I know their goaltending situation scares me. They got to get Demko healthy at some point if they want to do this. But
yeah.
I do think they're able to figure out the situation at some point with their goalies and with the talent they have, especially up front. I'm going to go Vancouver. I have them winning the Pacific anyway, and I think they'll win the President's Trophy. The Canucks are going to be dangerous if they get in the playoffs fully healthy and with Demko ready to go. I think if Demko's healthy for that series against Edmonton, it could go differently, but I am very high on the Canucks this year.
It's a good pick. I wasn't thinking them. I kind of just had the Oilers. I think it's a lazy pick, but I just see them. I think that they're bringing back mostly the same roster again, but they're just a little bit better. I think that goaltender Skinner's a good goaltender, but he's been young and he's been thrown to the wolves these past couple seasons. They've had him in there, and with Mike Smith retiring a couple years ago, so I think he's only going to be better at this point. And I got the Oilers taking the President's Trophy this season.
A good many teams to pick from. I feel like it's coming from the West this year. Don't know why I think that. I just feel like the West lends itself more. So I'm going to go with the reigning Hart Trophy winner and his Avalanche out there in Colorado. Again, there's a lot of teams in the West that this could go to. I just think Colorado is the best suited. I think McKinnon's going to put together another MVP type season. Not saying he'll win it, but I'm going to go with Colorado as the best team. Give me your worst team. Who's just going to be just dreadful? I mean, I feel like there's one team that really sticks out, and it's unfortunate that we're in the situation that they're in, obviously. But
I feel the same way, Robbie. I know I think it's going to be Columbus as well, because of, I know they've gone through just unspeakable things throughout these last few months, just overall. But just looking at the team right now, Boone Jenner's also hurt. He's the I think like the heartbeat of the team also right now. I like Dean Evison as a head coach. I just don't think they're going to be any good this year.
Yeah, I'm going to Snail. You can chime in. I'll just jump on Hunter's there. I was going to say Columbus as well. I don't think they were going to be very good with Johnny Gaudreau there. And Boone Jenner healthy. I still think I don't know if they would have finished dead last, but this is going to be an absolutely emotional roller coaster for this hockey team this year. Just getting through 82 games is going to be an achievement for this team, and losing Jenner when you need him probably more than anything, not just for what he does on the ice, but for what he does off the ice. Unfortunately, I have to say the Columbus Blue Jackets as well. Just like a kind of mixture of everything not going their way right now. And again, if they'd want to surprise some people and have put together a solid season, I think everybody's going to be rooting for them. It's just that roster has a bunch of holes in it, and unfortunately, I just don't see it being Columbus's year.
It's Columbus. Yeah, I mean, the other teams that you could maybe pick for, I think the Ducks are more improved. Hell, they got Radko Gudas, the Butcher, as their captain now. I expect them to be buzzing. I think they're going to be a much better team. Blackhawks, much more improved. I mean, maybe not much more. I think that they're improved a little bit. I think Utah's going to actually have a hell of a season this year. I might have them penciled in for one of your next questions. It's Columbus, which is unfortunate, but maybe they'll probably end up picking first overall this come next year.
Well, I mean, if you were on social media at all today, that was definitely a topic of discussion, unfortunately. So I think, Snell, you kind of alluded to it, so we'll start with you. Give me your surprise team.
I don't even know if it should be much of a surprise. Just after all the details came out about how that Arizona team had been being run behind the scenes and all that, no wonder they'd been held back. They're playing in a college rink and, getting dressed in a different building altogether. It's just kind of a joke. Embarrassing, really. But I got Utah. I think they're going to be a playoff team. I think they've had good pieces for a long time. And I think Clayton Keller being a captain, they've got their guy, like a guy who will lead by example. I think that he's going to have a hell of a season this year. They've got grit. They've got goaltending at a pretty cheap price too. I could see them being buyers at the deadline for the first time in God knows how long. So I got Utah as my surprise team, I would say. What about you guys?
Hunter?
I think I got Seattle for this year. I'm not sure if they're going to make it just yet in the playoffs, but I want to see how Dan Bylsma does. I want to see how he does with a new team that's not the Buffalo Sabres here, and with a team that has talent, especially up front. Their goalie situation could hopefully be better. They're going to be in the race this year. I don't think they're going to be nearly as bad as they were last year. It feels like the Kraken, they've had a lot of extremes. They've had a bad season, had a really good season, and then they've just had another kind of season overall.
Yeah.
I feel like this year you're going to see them closer to being the team you saw a couple years ago that made the playoffs. Again, not sure they're going to get in, but I think they're going to surprise some people this year and make it interesting.
Yeah, a team that I'm going to go with, I don't think is a playoff team. They're someone, though, that I'm kind of excited to watch because they're kind of on the upswing. They have some good talent there. It is the Canadiens in Montreal. I don't think they're a playoff team. I'm hoping Line can get back in, not rush back, but get back with and still get a fair amount of season. I just feel like Nick Suzuki is now wearing the C. Cole Caulfield is just ready to break out. Cole Caulfield's going to be probably one of the goal scorers for Team USA, not just this coming season, but when they go to the Olympics next year. I just feel like if they can get some goaltending, I think I like what Marty St. Louis is trying to do. I'm hoping that it eventually all comes together because I think hockey is better when certain teams are good. And one of those teams is the Montreal Canadiens. That building's a madhouse when they're bad. When they're good, that place is just absolute mayhem. It's like an insane asylum. So very interested to see what they do. And I think they're going to surprise some folks. Yeah, give me the team you think is going to be a disappointment. Hunter, you can go here if you want to.
Disappointment this year feels like this is an interesting one because I feel like I could go for like a lot of different teams. I'll say it. I think Buffalo. I'll believe it when I see it at this point when it comes to the Sabres. I predicted them, to make the playoffs last year. I looked like a complete and utter buffoon. I also predicted the Bruins to miss the playoffs last year in favor of the Sabres, and I looked very, very stupid. So I will never be picking the Bruins to miss the playoffs again until they actually do it.
Yeah.
But the Sabres, I just don't see it right now. I don't think Lindy Ruff is that good of a coach. I host the Locked On National show as well each Thursday with Nick Zararis, and a couple people went at me because I said Lindy Ruff is a bad coach. It's like, just look what he did with the Devils. I don't really think that good of a job. He was good in his first stint at times with the Sabres, but he's not the same coach anymore.
No, it's 2024, not 1999.
Yeah. He got off to a rough start. I'm going to go Buffalo because I gotta see it before.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. And I think there could be major changes coming if they are bad this year.
Yeah. Snell, you got a disappointment?
I kind of alluded to it earlier. I think the Carolina Hurricanes, I'm not sure about that squad. I think that Rod Brindamore is obviously highly touted for good reason. He's a hell of a coach. But I think a guy with that kind of intensity and the amount of pressure that teams dealt with to be a cup contender and get out of that Eastern Conference final, I think that voice grows stale. I have them. I don't know if I'm brave enough to say that they're not a playoff team. But I think I have them kind of being a disappointment this year. Another team that I don't know, I think that is going to regress despite picking up Jake Gensel is going to be the Tampa Bay Lightning. I'm not super sure about them at this point. I know I said that the Atlantic is competitive, and I see them maybe grabbing those 2 wild card spots. Maybe Tampa Bay is in that conversation, but dude, if you look at their depth, I mean, Vasilevsky had back surgery, and he just did not seem like himself last year. I'm curious if he gets back to his old ways of just Vezina conversation. Their backup goaler, Jonas Johansson. They brought back Ryan McDonough, who's an excellent shutdown D-man. Him and Eric Cernak are going to be logging lots of minutes. But besides them on D, J.J. Moser, Nick Perbix, Darren Radish, Emil Lilberg. I don't know. I don't know if they've got the depth on the back end. And then besides that top line that you're assuming is going to be made up of Braden Point, Nikita Kucherov, and Jake Gensel. I mean, Hagel's a nice guy, nice player. I like Anthony Cirelli as like a third line, responsible centerman. Connor Sheary, Cam Atkinson, Connor Geeky, Zemgus Girgensons, Luke Glendening, Mikey Asamont, Mitchell Chaffee. I mean, I don't know. I question their depth. So I could see them being a disappointment this year.
Yeah, I mean, they were in a dogfight until like the last week of the season last year. I mean, they were not locked in like they had been in a while, and they've lost Steven Stamkos. Yeah, they'll be. I don't think there's any guarantees there as well.
Question marks. I'll say that. Question marks. Disappointing. I think that they're starting to begin their kind of fall from grace from those back-to-back years and getting to the Cup 3 times and whatever.
Yeah, and I alluded to my choice as well. Until I see it with Ottawa, I just can't buy it. I'm sorry to the Senators fans. I know you desperately want a winner, and I'd love to see Ottawa be good again. But it's so hard. I remember when they made the 2 off seasons ago now, everybody was touting them as like they're next, and they've been out of the playoffs by like New Year's the last 2 seasons. Olmark's a nice pickup, solidifies that goaltending position. The pieces are there. Until I see it with my own eyes, I just can't buy it. So Ottawa is my pick there. I think there's a couple good options. I think who else in that division was I going to say?
Detroit, Montreal.
Detroit. I just without Detroit, I don't know what happened in Tampa Bay if Yzerman just struck gold in Tampa Bay, but something is amiss in Detroit. Enough talent there to be a playoff team. It's just not coming together for them. So yeah, I'm going to say Ottawa more so than Detroit, but Ottawa at some point, I got to see it with my own eyes before I buy it. Sorry, guys.
Dude, is there panic in Detroit with this Yzer plan?
Oh, yeah.
Like, are they tripping about this? Because, like you said, they're picking guys. They had some great players come through in Tampa Bay that they got in late rounds, and they've been picking high, not first overall high, but high for quite a few years. I feel like Anthony Mantha and they had another fellow over there too, but those guys left a long time ago, young, supposed to be good players. And I feel like they've had they had that Roenick kid that went over to Vancouver and had a hell of a season alongside Quinn Hughes. He was supposed to be a part of the Yzer plan. They didn't see anything in him. Philip Zadina, I think they had. He was a high pick for them. Didn't work out. If you're Detroit, I mean, not to just like spray shrapnel at Detroit right now, but like, what is going on over there? How have they been? Patrick Kane is supposed to be their like savior, and I don't know if he had hip resurfacing surgery or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah,
if you're a Detroit fan, there's some talk about question marks.
Kane is fine, but he's not nearly what he needs to be at this point. I think the main guy to look out there for is Lucas Raymond. That guy's a stud.
That guy's
a weapon. He'll score probably like 8 goals in 3 games against the Penguins this year.
Yeah, no, he's fantastic. Their defensive group is not good this year. Their goaltending also scares me a little bit.
Yeah,
I think
they have Oli Mata.
I believe Oli. Yeah,
they might. He's been all over the place.
I mean, outside of Mo Seider, again, there just really isn't much there in that defensive group. I mean, they still got Jeff Petrie. He had a good year for them last year, but still, you go up and down that roster. There still leaves a lot to be desired. If it gets ugly there this year, I wonder if they do consider moving on from Steve Yzerman at the GM spot. But we'll have to see.
This is why, like, only Joe Sakic's been able to make this work with the team that basically idolized him growing up. So it's a very dangerous prospect of hiring a franchise legend to run your team. But Detroit, if Snail, you asked about their fans. If you're tuned in to social, they are very vocal on social media, and they are. If things go bad early this season, you might see a lot of carnage in the Motor City.
It'd be crazy to hear them just like willingly want to move on from Steve Yzerman, just like the most celebrated, like one of the most celebrated players in their history.
Winning rules all.
True.
All right, just to wrap us up real quick here, give me a cup winner. Hunter?
Hate saying it. The Cup's going back to Canada this year. I think Edmonton.
Wow.
Yeah, I do think they're going to do it this year. They got better over the offseason. They made a lot of shrewd moves to fix their forward depth. Yeah, I know they lost Holloway, they lost Broberg, but I do think they're going to be in the market for a defenseman at the deadline. I think their goaltending will get them by. I think Edmonton's coming in with a big chip on their shoulder after what happened last year. They almost came back against the Panthers. I'm going to go with Edmonton to do it this year.
So they're going to pull Panthers this year is what you're saying.
Yeah. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. If you watch any of that Inside or whatever the Amazon show was called,
Face Off Inside the NHL,
Connor McDavid has been going through it. And he's probably the one guy. He's probably like Crosby, the one guy I would not want to go against with a vendetta. So yeah, Edmonton's if they can get back, I think they win it. Snail.
I'm looking at. I think the Cup's it's going to be in the West this year, and Edmonton. That is hard to raise too many questions around that pick for Cup winner. Dude, I got a weird feeling about the Predators, though. I got a weird feeling in Nashville that they might be hoisting Lord Stanley. I think they get a guy, Stamkos, who's I can't believe they got rid of him. I can't believe they disrespected Steven Stamkos the way that they did with that contract garbage. I think Marchessault is such a gamer, dude. Like that dude, you get the pedigree that Stamkos has, and then you bring that just Marchessault and all that he brings on and off the ice, and you add that to a group that has Ryan O'Reilly as a leader, and you got a bunch of young, promising, good players that can put the puck in the net. You got UC Saros locked back in. I like what they got going, man. So I think I'm gonna go kind of a little off the board and say Nashville's hoisting Lord Stanley come spring.
I mean, they had that hot run last year and they got in the playoffs. And they got better this offseason. So I'm also going to stay in the West, but I'm going to head a little farther west to the Lone Star State.
Dallas.
At some point, I feel like it's coming together. The pieces are there. The coaching's there. They just seem like they're right on the cusp. So I'm going with. I'd love to see Ben get his moment with the Cup. They're just the young talent in that team is just phenomenal. Ottinger, he had a weird playoffs. I think that he can shake it off though. He's going to be 1A or 1B on Team USA with Hellebuck. So I'm going with the Dallas Stars to hoist the Stanley Cup, but it seems like we're all at least in agreement that the Cup's going west. Hunter has it going back to Canada, Snail, Nashville. I have it in Dallas. So before we wrap this up, does anybody have anything else to add about either the Penguins or the NHL as a whole?
Yeah, actually, I got one for Hunter. I talked with Robbie about it a little bit, and it's been a while since the Penguins have ever had a player that could throw their name in the hat for potentially the Calder. I'm not saying Rutger. I'm not going to go out and say that Rutger's a candidate, but where are you at with Rutger and like maybe the possibility that he could? Is there an opportunity for him to maybe be in that running alongside guys like Celebrini, Hudson up in Montreal, Stankoven proven already in the NHL, but he's going to be considered a rookie this year. Is there any possibility that we could be looking at a Calder race with a guy like Rutger McGroarty?
I mean, there's always a chance, but I still think right now Celebrini is probably the favorite for it overall. In my opinion, I think McGroarty is going to have to go out there and play his tail off and outproduce even the people who are super high on him, I should say. He's going to have to go out there and outproduce their expectations for him as well. And I am someone who is pretty high on him as a player. I even said during the show when they acquired him that he would have a shot at playing next to Sidney Crosby as early as this season. Obviously, that's not the case right now, but I do think if he goes out there, starts well during the regular season, plays well in that third line, he will have a shot at potentially being up on Crosby's wing at some point during the year. But he's going to have to, really go out there, score a bunch, play well as a playmaker, play well defensively. That's best case scenario where he's like a sneaky pick for the Calder. I think overall, you have Matvei Michkov in Philadelphia as well. Yeah. He's going to be very good this year for the Flyers. And I do think that the time I think is finally arrived where the Flyers might have their own superstar. Just hope he doesn't kill the Penguins every night like how Crosby has killed them. Yeah. But I do think it's a slim chance, but there's still at least a small one. Regardless, I'm hopeful for him, but people gotta keep their expectations in check, just because I know we haven't seen a prospect as good as McGroarty come through the Penguin system in quite a while. I mean, obviously we saw that, in 17 with Gensel when he came up. He was obviously tremendous, turned into a perennial 40 goal scorer, but it's still been a little bit since we've seen, a true bona fide top prospect come through the Penguins here. I know he was acquired, but still make the team and then perform well. So some chance for me.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously not going to get the leash that like a guy like Celebrini, like a lottery team, like Celebrini's going to be getting top power play minutes.
Right.
He's the guy. He's going to be the one that the puck's going to all the time. A lot of vets. Who would you say that is Drew O'Connor really Rutgers? The guy that Rutger has to outperform to potentially get a look on Sid's wing early on. Is he kind of the main guy on that left side that he's got to outperform to get that shot along Sid?
Yeah, I would say so. I think O'Connor has very much earned that role next to Crosby. He was great all season last year. He outperformed him during camp in the preseason. He deserves that shot at the top line on Crosby's wing for at least to start the season. And I expect good things from O'Connor again this year. I think he's going to score 20 plus this year. I think he's really played well the last, year and change. I remember when he first got to the NHL, he looked like a player who belonged in the minor leagues, but he was able to go through the development system. And now he's a player that, again, I think he can score 20 plus this year. There's been comps regarding Brian Rust with him and with how Rust came to the NHL and how he, just worked on his game overall. That's kind of similar with O'Connor. But I do think McGordy, if he wants that top spot on Crosby's wing, yes, he is going to have to outperform O'Connor during the season.
I think Rutgers got that potential to outperform a guy like O'Connor. I like Drew O'Connor on Sid's left side. Sid likes those straight line kind of predictable players. I've said I've liked Drew's frame. I like the big body down there. And you guys talked about Valtteri Puustinen showing some flashes. Drew O'Connor has shown some flashes over the last couple seasons too, where he's got a shot when he can get it off. He can kill penalties. He's good down low below the dots like Sid likes to play. So anyways, the one thing I was curious about is, I guess, is Rutger maybe a sneaky pick for the Calder this year? And I like what I'm hearing out of you. Robbie, what about you?
Well, I will say about Drew O'Connor, playing with Sidney Crosby requires thinking like Sidney Crosby. It is why Jake Gensel was so good with Sidney Crosby. It is why Brian Rust is so good with Sidney Crosby. And I think we see a little bit with Drew O'Connor. Rutger McGroarty, I believe, has the pedigree to eventually be a first-line player with Sidney Crosby. And if it's not with Sidney Crosby, maybe it is the next part of this Penguins franchise. He is a first-line player. Again, wait and see. I'm glad he's going to be getting a shot. He had great work with Eller and Puljujarvi in the preseason. They need a third line desperately, and I think that is the makings of a good one. So, all right, Hunter, where can they find you on the socials and with Locked On?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Hunter Hodies. You can follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins, and you can follow the Locked On podcast. Well, Locked On Podcast now, excuse me. You can follow Locked On Penguins podcast wherever you get your podcasts: Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, Sirius XM Radio, all that good stuff. And also, there's a lot of weird people sleeping on Colorado this year, saying that they might miss the playoffs just because of everything that's going on. No, I'm not betting against Cale Makar, Mikko Rantanen, and Nathan McKinnon. That's just not happening here. But yeah, you can find my socials there.
All right, perfect. Snail, anything to wrap us up here?
Nope, just subscribe to Lock On Pens on Spotify. Gonna check it out. But other than that, man, I really got nothing.
All right, well, Hunter, thank you very much for joining us. I certainly hope that we can work together again in the future.
For sure.
Absolutely. As I said, their show is fantastic. They have, you guys have a YouTube channel as well, where
Yes.
you do videos of your, you post the videos. That's actually how I watch more than anything. I throw it on there during work, and I listen to you and Pat, who have been around covering hockey for quite a few years now. Like you said, 5 years. You write about hockey as well. Thanks for joining us. Great talk. I know that all three of us are very excited for Wednesday night. Preseason, there's a lot of preseason games, so it kind of gets the appetite rolling. But that is all we have. Hunter, once again, thank you. Snail, I'll talk to you later in the week when we start game recaps. But for Robbie, this has been another episode of the Skating Penguin Network. We will talk to you guys later in the week.